Hello everybody, this is Voodoo G and you are watching my studio tour. In this video I will be showing you the gear I use to create music. Let's start with the computer. This is a custom build I made using an AMD Ryzen 3800X. It has 32GB of RAM, a 1TB SSD and a 1TB HDD drive. The graphics card is an AMD Vega 64. And the most important part, of course, it has lots of flashing lights. My current audio interface is a Native Instruments Complete Audio 6 Mark I. The microphone I connected to it is a T-Bone SC450 XLR condenser microphone. I have been using this microphone for many years now and it has never let me down. It is probably one of the best budget microphones you can get. That is, if you can actually get it in your region, because it's not available everywhere in the world. Now that we've covered the input section of my system, let's talk about the output section. For mixing, I use the KRK Rocket RP5 studio monitors. Other than that, I also use the Sennheiser Momentum headphones. The small speakers next to my screen are actually for my PlayStation 4. I don't use them for music. The screen is a 60Hz LG ultrawide monitor. So let's get to the main attraction, my MIDI controller keyboard. This right here is a Native Instruments Complete Control S88. Apart from the computer, this is the most expensive single part of this home studio. And I must say, it is 100% worth it. This is the best keyboard I have ever used. And I'm not just saying that. This keyboard actually feels like a grand piano. And the integration with Native Instruments software is just fantastic. And I have not seen anything comparable to this anywhere else thus far. And to top it all off, this thing also has a lot of flashing lights. Connected to the Complete Control S is a MIDI-Tech MP1 sustain pedal. So let's move on to my wall. Right here we've got my Alesis Vortex Wireless Mark II. Right next to it we've got my guitar, which is a Harley Benton. This is modeled after a Stratocaster. Next to the guitar on my shelf are my PS4 controllers. On top of the shelf we've got my ukulele. Currently also at the top of my shelf is my M-Audio Code 61. The knobs and the faders are actually custom painted so that they are easier to see in a dark setting. When I'm actually using the M-Audio Code, I put it on this keyboard stand here. I can really recommend these types of stands, the folding ones, because they are very portable and they work really well. So, let's move on to the big shelf right here. At first glance, it is hard to figure out what's actually in this. So let's take out the most important parts and have a look at them individually. First up right here is my Alesis V25. I used to take this with me on the road, but it's quite bulky even though it's just a 25-key MIDI keyboard. It isn't really designed for portability, it's more of a compact studio controller. Next up is actually the oldest MIDI controller I still own, the Akai LPD8. This is actually my second MIDI controller. I bought it after I got the Alesis QX49. Back in 2012, and that actually makes this device older than my Novation Launchpad S. Over the years I haven't really been using it that much, however this is a fantastic device, it's probably one of the most durable devices I've owned and I can recommend it to anyone. A testament of how popular and good this device is the fact that they're still making this exact piece of hardware. If you don't have much money and you need a pad controller for playing drums, Akai LPD8, go get it. You can do nothing wrong with this device. Now let's talk about a different kind of pad controller. This right here is my Korg pad control. This thing is actually pretty much retro gear at this point, as they're no longer making this thing. But it's still really fun to use occasionally. But my main problem with it is how bulky it is and how fast spaced out everything is. It could be much more consolidated, and it's a bit of a pain to use it nowadays. Now, pretty much the complete opposite to the Korg pad control is my Novation Launchpad S. I got this device back in 2013 for my birthday, and I've been using it for many different purposes over the years. For a very long time I've just been using it as a DAW navigation controller, as my MIDI keyboards could not switch patches or navigate through the playlist by themselves. This thing always could, and I've been using it in many performances over the years. This thing is the very definition of a compact powerhouse controller. This thing does so many different things and it is so portable, it's ridiculous. The Launchpad that is obviously one of the most popular MIDI controllers out there, and for a good reason. These things are fantastic, and this thing has held up for many years for me now. 7 years to be exact. Speaking of powerhouse controllers, next up is my Native Instruments Machine Jam, for which I actually have a deck cover by this company called Prodector. That's a pun. This thing is really good. It's another powerhouse controller. It can do pretty much all the things that the Launchpad can do, and then some. However, it has a very steep learning curve. The machine software is really fun to use, and at this point I've actually underused it quite a bit, but I'm gonna do a lot more stuff with it in the future. So stay tuned for that. Okay, that now pretty much covers the controller side of my studio. So let's move on to some other gear. Right here I've got my Focusrite Scarlett Solo. I originally got this audio interface for recording music on the go when I used my laptop, because I didn't want to have to take my Sapphire 6 with me and have to disconnect it from the main PC, so I got this thing instead. Speaking of the Sapphire, right here is my old main audio interface, the Focusrite Sapphire 6. I got this back in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, and honestly, at that time this was already a pretty outdated interface. The reason for why I replaced this with the Complete Audio 6 by Native Instruments is mainly driver issues. Once I upgraded from Windows 7 to Windows 10, this audio interface started to cause problems. We had clicking noises, and sometimes it would just disconnect from the PC, and other times it would not properly load when I started the PC, but since I upgraded to the Audio 6, I haven't had this many problems anymore. Before I got my SC450 XLR, I used a different kind of microphone. This one is a cheap Presa SH1T, or also called garbage, crap, trash, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't work very well. You should not get anything that's below like 30 euros when you want to get a microphone, or you'll be severely disappointed. Right here we've got my little tambourine with a bunch of instruments in it. It's a baby little tambourine. It's really nice. Found it on the attic only recently. I haven't actually used it in one of my songs yet, but I am planning on doing that. This thing right here, it's like a Maracha egg shaker. Found it on Mallorca, where I bought it. And you can get a surprising amount of shaker sounds out of this, depending on how you grab it and how you shake it. It's really useful. This thing right here is my harmonica. It's a really old echo harmonica. This was actually my mother's when she was still a child. It's bent a little, so it doesn't sound perfect anymore, but it's still workable. Yeah, there you can see it still works, but it's a bit crooked, but it's fun. The last electronic piece of music gear is my Korg guitar tuner. I use it for tuning my guitar. I think it's pretty obvious what this thing does, so yeah, guitar tuner. It works very well. So, let's talk about my software. I'm going to keep this relatively short, because if I was to talk about every single piece of software I ever bought, we would still be here tomorrow. My main digital audio workstation is FL Studio. I personally use the Signature bundle. The other DAW which I regularly use is Traction Waveform. The two have very different workflows, but both of those work very well for me. You should give both of them a try. Waveform is actually free. As for plugins, I'm only going to talk about the ones I use the most. My most commonly used synth is actually ImageLine's Citrus, which is part of the FL Studio Producer Edition. The second would be ImageLine's Hammer, which I purchased separately. It's a fantastic additive synthesizer. Third place would be Native Instruments Massive, or Massive X nowadays. I use both of them because they are very fun, and wavetable synthesizers are just very easy to use. And in last place would be actually my favorite synthesizer, which is Native Instruments Razor. It can't do as much as the other synthesizers, but it can make some really cool, unique sounds, and it's very easy to use. Also, it looks very pretty. In case you're wondering what piano libraries I use, or what sample libraries I use in general, they are all contact libraries by Native Instruments. All of them are part of Complete. So there we go, that pretty much covers everything. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and you'll hear me in the next video. Until then, goodbye and have an awesome day.